Hi everyone, so we're going to continue reading The Tiger Rising, and we left off on chapter 6, where Rob stood up to those people who were bullying Sistine, and then he ended up running, and he was kind of like thinking to himself, like, why would he stand up to them? Like, that's so, like, that was so brave of him. And so then he was thinking about how, whatever, like, he's like, I don't have to come back here ever again. So, all right, so we're picking up on chapter 7. It turned out to be an extraordinary day in almost every possible way. It started with finding the tiger, and it ended with Sistine Bailey sitting down next to him on the bus on the way home from school. Her dress was torn and muddied. There was a scrape down her right arm, and her hair stuck out in 100 different directions. So you guys remember she just got into that fight at school, so that's why she's all, messed up. She sat down in the empty seat beside him and stared at him with her black eyes. There isn't any place else to sit, she said to him. This is the last empty seat. Rob shrugged. It's not like I want to sit here, she said. Okay, said Rob. He shrugged his shoulders again. He hoped that she wasn't going to thank him for saving her. What's your name? She demanded. Rob Horton, he told her. Well, let me tell you something, Rob Horton. You shouldn't run. That's what they want you to do. Run. Rob stared at her with his mouth open. She stared back. I hate it here, she said, looking away from him, her deep voice even deeper than before. This is a stupid hick town with stupid hick teachers. Nobody in the whole school even knows what the Sistine Chapel is. I know, said Rob. I know what the Sistine Chapel is. Immediately he regretted saying it. It was his policy to not say things, but it was a policy he was having a hard time maintaining around Sistine. I bet, Sistine sneered at him. I bet you know. It's a picture of God making the world, he said. Sistine stared at him hard. She narrowed her small eyes until they almost disappeared. It's in Italy, said Rob. The pictures are painted on the ceiling. It was as if a magician had cast a spell over him. He opened his mouth, and the words fell out, one on top of the other, like gold coins. He couldn't stop talking. So that's kind of something that's out of character for Rob, isn't it? Usually he doesn't say much. He doesn't usually talk so much. So the fact that he can't stop talking, it's kind of out of character, huh? I don't got to go to school on account of my legs. I got a note that says so. Mr. Felmer, he's the principal. He says the parents are worried that what I got is contagious. That means that the other kids could catch it. I know what contagious means, Sistine said. She looked at his legs, and then she did something truly astounding. She closed her eyes and reached out her left hand and placed it on top of Rob's right leg. Please let me catch it, she whispered. You won't, said Rob, surprised at her hand, how small it was and how warm. It made him think for a minute of his mother's hand, tiny and soft. He stopped that thought. It ain't contagious, he told her. Please let me catch it, Sistine whispered again, ignoring him, keeping her hand on his leg. Please let me catch it so I won't have to go to school. It ain't a disease, said Rob. It's just me. Shut up, Sistine said. She sat up very straight. Her lips moved. The other kids shouted and screamed and laughed and called to each other, but the two of them sat apart from it all, as if their seat was an island in the sea of sweat and exhaust. Sistine opened her eyes. She took her hand away and rubbed it up and down both of her own legs. You're crazy, Rob told her. Where do you live? Sistine asked, as still rubbing her hand over her legs. In the motel, in the Kentucky Star. You live in a motel? She said, looking up at him. It ain't permanent, he told her. It's just until we get back on our feet. Sistine stared at him. I'll bring you your homework, she said. I'll bring it to you at the motel. I don't want my homework, he told her. So, said Sistine. And I just want to pause for a second too, thinking about like why was she so shocked that he lives in a motel? And you guys probably know a motel is kind of like a hotel, right? But it's maybe sometimes a little bit more run down. There's less less rooms, I guess. But typically people wouldn't live there like full time. You know what I mean? Like it's usually a place to stay. If you're traveling, you know, it's just a quick little stop for a night or two. But she's kind of shocked that that he's living there right now. And he's saying, well, it's not permanent. It's till we can get back on our feet, meaning probably until they have enough money that they could afford their own place. Uh-oh. My laptop is dying. Hold on, guys. Let me plug it back in. It must not be plugged in. And then we'll pick up where I left off. Hold on. Okay. Here we go. So let's finish this chapter. And now the plug's stuck. By then, Norton and Billy Threemonger had spotted them sitting together, and they were moving in. Rob was relieved when the first thump came to the back of his head, because it meant that he wouldn't have to talk to Sistine anymore. It meant that he wouldn't end up saying too much, telling her about important things, like his mother, or the tiger. He was glad almost that Norton and Billy were there to beat him into silence. So remember, he has this thing about him that he likes to keep things in the suitcase. He doesn't like to share too much. He doesn't like to think about too much. And so for some reason, Sistine kind of makes that more challenging for him. Because remember, he's not used to having really any friends, right? So this is an instance where he might be possibly forming a friendship with someone, and that's a little scary for him for being alone for so long, for so much. All right, so we're going to read chapter 8 next. His father read the note from the principal slowly, putting his big finger under the words as if they were bugs he was trying to keep still. When he was finally done, he laid the letter on the table and rubbed his eyes with his fingers and sighed. The rain beat a sad rhythm on the roof of the motel. That stuff ain't nothing anybody else can catch, his father said. I know it, Rob told him. I already told that to that principal once before. I called up there and told him that. Yes, sir, said Rob. His father sighed. He stopped rubbing his eyes and looked up at Rob. You want to stay home? He asked. Rob nodded. His father sighed again. Maybe I'll make an appointment, get one of them doctors to write down that what you got ain't catching, all right? Yes, sir, said Rob. But I won't do it for a few days. I'll give you some time off. That would be all right, said Rob. You gotta fight them, you know, them boys. I know you don't want to, but you gotta fight them, else they won't ever leave you alone. Rob nodded. He saw Sistine twirling and punching and kicking, and the vision made him smile. In the meantime, you can help me out around here, his father said. Do some of the maintenance man work at the motel. Do some sweeping and cleaning for me. Beauchamp's running me ragged. There ain't enough hours in the day to do everything that man wants done. Now go on and hand me that medicine. His father slathered and slapped the fishy-smelling ointment on Rob's legs, and Rob concentrated on holding still. Do you think Beauchamp is the richest man in the world? He asked his father. Nah, his father said. He don't own but this one itty-bitty motel now, and the woods. He just likes to pretend he's rich is all. Why? I was just wondering, said Rob. He was thinking about the tiger pacing back and forth in the cage. He was certain that the tiger belonged to Beauchamp. And wouldn't you have to be the richest man in the world to own a tiger? Rob wanted desperately to go see the tiger again, but he was afraid that he had imagined the whole thing. He was afraid that the tiger might have disappeared with the morning mist. Can I go outside? Rob asked when his father was done. Nah, his father said. I don't want that medicine rained off you. It costs too much. Rob was relieved almost that he had to stay inside. What if he went looking for the tiger and it wasn't there? Rob's father cooked them macaroni and cheese for supper on the 2-burner hot plate they kept on the table next to the TV. He boiled the macaroni too long, and a lot of it stuck to the pan, so there weren't many noodles to go with the powdery cheese. Someday, he told Rob, you and me will have a house with a real stove. I'll do some good cooking then. This is good, Rob lied. You eat all you want. I ain't that hungry, his father told him. After supper, his father fell asleep in the recliner with his head thrown back and his mouth open. He snored, and his feet, big with crooked toes, jerked and trembled. In between the snores, his stomach growled long and loud, as if he was the hungriest man in the world. So that's interesting. Think about how his dad said he wasn't that hungry, then all of a sudden, Rob hears his stomach growling. So why do you think his dad lied about not being hungry? Maybe he wanted to make sure there was enough food for Rob to eat. So it kind of tells you the kind of position they're in right now. They're living in a motel. They barely have enough money for the medicine for his legs, never mind, food. So think about, their situation that they're in, how we can empathize with these characters. Rob sat on his bed and started to work on carving the tiger. He had a good piece of maple, and his knife was sharp, and in his mind he could see the tiger clearly, but something different came out of the wood. It wasn't a tiger at all. It was a person, with a sharp nose and small eyes and skinny legs. What do you think he's carving? It wasn't until he started working on the dress that Rob realized he was carving Sistine. He stopped for a minute and held the wood out in front of him and shook his head in wonder. It was just like his mother had always said. You could never tell what would come out of the wood. It did what it wanted to, and you just followed. He stayed up late working on the carving, and when he finally fell asleep, he dreamed about the tiger. Only it wasn't in a cage. It was free and running through the woods, and there was something on its back, but Rob couldn't tell what it was. As the tiger got closer and closer, Rob saw that the thing was Sistine in her pink party dress. She was riding the tiger. In his dream, Rob waved to her, and she waved back at him. But she didn't stop. She and the tiger kept going, past Rob, deeper and deeper into the woods. And so that dream he's having is what the book cover is kind of based on, right? That's Sistine, and she's riding the tiger, and Rob's just kind of sitting there watching them go by. It's pretty cool, huh? All right, so we're going to stop there for today. I hope you guys are enjoying the book, and we'll read chapter 9 and 10 next time.